The following is a presentation of ESPN on ABC.
We're in the Finger Lake region of New York at famed Watkins Glen International Raceway, where today the IndyCar Series returns to the road course. It all began this past May with the 91st running of the Indy 500, where momentum turned to domination for Scotland's Dario Franchitti. This week, Watkins Glen. Where road racing reality becomes a battle between two curve-carving greats. A two-time Glen winner, Scott Dixon has been riding in the shadows. Will this be the week where Dario Franchitti falls and Scott Dixon strikes again? Let the road rage begin at the Glen. And we welcome you live to Watkins Glen International. 3.3 miles of some of the most famous pavement in road racing in the world. And we're here for race 10 of 17 on the 2007 IndyCar schedule. It's the Camping World Watkins Glen Grand Prix. The third year we've been making this annual stop now. And for some of these racers, with 4 of our last 8 events on road courses, that's a dream come true. For others, it's a true nightmare. We'll unfold those stories as the day continues. We welcome you to Firestone Race Day. We'll get you caught up and get you set for the next 60 laps that we are about to unfold before us in the next couple of hours. Take a look at the point standings through 9 races so far, and Dario Franchitti has built a sizable margin, 65 markers over Scott Dixon, the man who has won here 2 years in a row at the Glen. Then it's Dan Wheldon and Tony Kanaan tied for third, and Sam Hornish Jr. over 100 points behind. For Dixon, this is a big day. He has to win this race to cut into that margin. Let's check in with Jack Arute.
Well, Marty, let's find out from the man himself just how critical is a convincing victory for Scott Dixon today in the points chase.
We need it. It'd be nice. We've had so many runner-up positions this year. It's kind of getting old. Even in qualifying here, Helio just nipped us again. So he's been third-time lucky on the pole, so I can't see why I can't be third-time lucky winning this race again. So hopefully that's the story. But for us, big time, we need points, man. We've got to start closing the gap on Dario.
Scott, what is it about Watkins Glen and this course that lends itself so well to your style of driving?
I don't know. To be honest, I just love all the road courses. It's great to go to all these again, and especially, great American tracks like this here in Watkins Glen. And I don't know, it's just such a fast-flowing circuit. It's so rewarding when you get a good lap together here. And we missed a little bit in qualifying, but the race is what we need. And I just love these road courses that the IndyCar Series is putting on for us.
Well, the man that Scott Dixon is trying to chase down for the points chases with our very own Vince Welch.
He is the points leader, and he's the hottest driver on the circuit. He's won the last 2 races. Dario Franchitti on quite a roll. 7 career wins in the IndyCar Series. They've all been on ovals. You're the road course master. What would it mean to get one on a road course here today at Watkins Glen?
It would mean a lot. I love driving here. I love driving all the road courses. I just haven't got it together yet between myself and the team. We need to do a better job at these places, and hopefully today's the day.
He was very quick in the morning practice. He's one of the favorites today, Dario Franchitti, and his teammate, Marco Andretti, a young man who didn't have such a good run here a year ago.
Very frustrated and angry Marco Andretti. The man he is angry at is Eddie Cheever.
Blatant, absolutely on purpose deal. The NYSE car was a contender for the win. It's a bummer.
He told you, I've got the fastest car and I'm mad. He's wrong, and that's the youngness coming out of him.
Well, you just got a glimpse of how exciting Marco Andretti can be on a road course. Your race strategist, Kyle Moyer, paid you a nice compliment last week. He said that ever since Texas, he's noticed you really consistently bringing your A game. To you, what's been the difference?
Having fun because you know, in the beginning of the season I put so much pressure on myself to win these races, and my thinking wasn't so far off last year really, where just drive to the limit of the race car and enjoy myself, because I feel that's when I do my best work. So you know, that's going to be the goal today, and it has been ever since Texas.
Well, hopefully he'll leave the track today with a smile on his face.
All right, thanks, Brianne. Of course, a lot of news this week involving Sam Hornish Jr. and his future. There's Roger Penske. We had a chance to talk to both of them, of course. Sam been running a lot of Busch races. What's in his future? Will he be moving to NASCAR next year? Well, we sat both down with Sam and Roger.
My plans for next year haven't really been decided. You know, it's really just about, you know, kind of feeling things out, knowing what we need to do.
The big time will be the time after the IRL is finished at the end of the season, where he'll run 6 or 7 races, and at that point we'll make a decision on what Sam wants to do and what we want to do, and also our sponsors. At this point, I can be honest with you, we've not made a decision.
You know, that was what I originally started racing to do, was to be an IndyCar driver, and you know, in some ways, you know, I'd feel a little bit disappointed if I didn't do that anymore, but in other ways you have to look and see what the options are out there for the future.
So here's the dilemma. You can make a lot of money by staying put in IndyCar, where he does very well, or Sam Hornish can make a lot more money if he makes the jump to NASCAR. What do you do?
Well, Marty, as you know, we spoke to Sam yesterday. It was very evident in our conversation with him that he was very aware of what's going on in NASCAR. He's been studying that. He knew about all the different body styles that they use at different tracks, so he's paying attention to that. So he must be really thinking hard whether or not he's going to do it. But, you know, I look at this situation. Changing teams within one series is very difficult. Changing series completely is very, very hard. You take into account Juan Pablo Montoya. Has he been successful or not successful? People argue that. I'm sure Sam is watching all that going on right now.
He's already won 3 championships and the Indy 500. What's left over here? Maybe that's one of the factors as well. And as I said, the decision won't come till after the season's over. We thank you for watching Firestone Race Day. When we come back, it'll be time to start engines as we will, well, head down this highway. It's 3.3 miles long. The Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix, brought to you by Camping World, America's outdoor store. GoDaddy.com, the world's #1 .com provider. Make your name with us. And the Home Depot. You can do it. And back here at Watkins Glen, that is Montour Falls. Not too far from the racetrack. As you look down from high above, we get ready to go trackside for those famous words to get the engines fired. Let's get the command to start this race.
Now it is time for the most famous words in motorsports. Once again, here's your Grand Marshal, JJK.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines!
So the engines have fired, and that gives us a chance to show you our Camping World starting grid. There's Helio Castroneves on pole for the 3rd straight year here, and the man right alongside trying to win this race for the 3rd straight year. Dario Franchitti, Tony Kanaan. There's Sam Hornish Jr. with a good qualifying effort for Sam, and Marco Andretti. Buddy Rice, the big surprise.
You know, 3 top 10 finishes in the last 3 races. An improved Dreyer and Reinbold team could be a factor today, Marty.
As you take a look at the rest of the drivers in this field, let's talk a little bit also about Team Penske and Helio Castroneves. He's been successful getting in the poles, but he hasn't been successful lately getting out of trouble.
You know, 5th pole out of 10 races so far this year, but he's led races but just not got to the finish line, with the exception of the St. Pete's race, which he won. And you even think about his teammate, Sam Hornish Jr., 1 win so far this year also at Texas. What a difference a year makes.
Right now, Sam over 100 points back. This was the problem at Milwaukee.
Lost the rear wing, the car crashed very few laps towards the end and taking the checkered flag. Here we have just multiple car accidents taking out both entries on the Penske team, not collecting points. And here at the start at Richmond, on the start itself, Sam Hornish spun the car around before the green flag.
But the team under Roger Penske, that man right there, has had success in the past here at the Glen. Of course, those 3 poles, all by Helio Castroneves. But there have also been 3 other races back in the old kart days when they made the stop here at Watkins Glen, and they had 3 wins. All right, let's take a look at this 3.37-mile road course from high above.
A favorite of so many drivers here because they love the natural terrain road courses like we have here at Watkins Glen. They love street circuits too, but this road course itself at Watkins Glen is tremendous. Riding along now with Scott Dixon. Watch the telemetry on the right-hand side, over 160 miles an hour going down into turn 1. Down a couple of gears, back on the gas, and now climbing up about 10 stories through this turn 2, 3, and 4 complex. Flat on the gas, getting that long run down towards the back stretch and going down towards the bus stop. The car just continues to accelerate here. Just watch the speed climb up to 175 miles an hour and hard on the brakes, down a couple of gears. Now watch how fast he goes through this bus stop, Marty. Up and over the curbs and going along here. He's still on the original track itself and now going to enter into what they call the boot, the new extension down the hill now towards turn 6. They've repaved this track. All the drivers tell me a lot of grip, a lot of downforce, a lot of speed through here, and back hard on the gas towards turn 7. A little trickier, a lot of concrete that you see the light colored texture there. Drivers have a hard time putting their foot on the gas. No traction control in these cars here. Climbing back up the hill now towards turn 8. Again, you see the speed up towards 150 miles an hour for a quick moment. Great passing zone here. Watch for some action here today. And here's the climb for this area that we have going back up onto the original track. The car gets light. It starts to slide towards the outside. You're on the flat of the original NASCAR track and the Formula 1 track itself. And here we go through turns 10 and 11. High speed through here, really quick. This is an important turn, turn 11, leading onto the front stretch and running down towards turn 1, which is probably one of the best passing zones, turn 1, Marty, on this complete racetrack.
And laps in the range of 1 minute and 30 seconds. All right, let's take a look from high above and show you the boot section. And Scott, you can outline it for everybody where NASCAR runs and where we're going to run.
Well, the original track and NASCAR is running right here, goes along all the way through this section here. And as the helicopter's moving around on us, we'll start to see the boot here over on your left-hand side. And that's turns 5, 6, 7, and 8 going back up towards the original track. A great section of track, a lot of elevation changes, and very difficult for the drivers here today.
Okay, this will be the end of our first of 2 pace laps. It gives us another opportunity to show you our onboards, and got some great views for you. First off, right off the nose of Danica Patrick's number 7 Motorola car. Scott Dixon, of course, we have 2 views. We'll have out the front and the rear as well. And Buddy Rice, that's right underneath the wing plate, overlooking the right rear tire. That's going to be a great view watching the suspension work. Jeff Simmons, AJ Foyt IV, and that camera mounted for Marco Andretti is right next to the gearbox. So we should see some great views down low there as well. All right. What should be watching for today?
Well, right here for certain, one fuel setting this year. Previously, drivers have had the option of leaning the engine out and making the fuel strategy maybe part of their program for the day. Well, today, one fuel strategy. We started that many races ago. Honda only allows you to run a 100% fuel setting. Watch for these guys just to go flat out racing. No trying to win this thing on fuel economy. Physical fitness, all the drivers are telling me that most physical time here in these tracks are the turns they've repaved, turns 1, 5, and 6. Very hot here, very humid. Remember, no power steering in these cars whatsoever. And road course specialists, well, the top 10 of this grid, with maybe the exception of Sam Hornish Jr., really are road course specialists. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can make some moves here today to try to get past everybody that's really in their element.
Let's get a final pre-race update from pit lane. Jack Arute.
Want a sleeper for this race? How about Buddy Rice? Cobbling together on 2 short tracks, 2 top 5 finishes, and the chemistry on this little team is starting to come together. Why? Rice says it's accountable for this man, John Dick, who is his engineer, and he says we communicate very, very well. Both of them agree that for Rice to succeed today, though, Vince Welch, they will have to attack, attack, attack.
Jack, it is a thin line between aggressiveness and patience on a road course. For Helio Castroneves, you get no championship points for sitting on the pole, but the way things have been going for Castroneves, he believes that this is going to be a nice boost of momentum for his team, earning pole position heading into this race today. The last 4 races, they've had problems. He says earning pole got them pointed in the right direction today. Brianne Pedigo?
Well, the slab of concrete you're looking at right now may not seem like much, but to Sam Hornish Jr., it's enough to cause a bump as he's pulling into his pit stall. He says it's an actual change in elevation, makes the car jump a bit, so he's going to have to lay off the brakes as he's pulling into his pit stall so the car doesn't lock up and end up in the wall.
All right, thanks for the final update, guys, as the cars make their way towards turn 9. Pace car with Johnny Rutherford at the wheel pulls off right there. That's where he will station himself. Back on the straightaway, which NASCAR uses on their course. And into turn 10, the left-hander. One more to go, and we'll be heading down the front straightaway and the green flag. Helio Castroneves on the inside as they head towards turn number 1. He comes through turn 11. And the Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix is green. Well, you saw Dario Franchitti go to the outside around Scott Dixon. Here we go through the S's. One car off in the back there, looked like one of the Vision Racing cars. No damage done.
Very aggressive for Dario Franchitti because he's usually the passive one in that group. Tony Kanaan is usually the one that does the heroic start.
Down into the bus stop chicane for the first time. Can get to be a real log jam when you got this many cars. Everybody so far making it through. Now the long downhill run into the boot.
Now the interesting thing I'm watching here right now is everybody, Dixon, Franchitti, Kanaan, they don't want to let Castroneves get too far in advance, and I'm sure that's why Franchitti was being so aggressive on the start, because Kanaan knows how fast everybody is. He's a road course specialist too, like I mentioned. All these guys are, but they have to keep the guy in front right on the nose.
Well, there was another reason Dario wanted to get around Scott Dixon. His very first words to me when we talked about this race was, Dixon's the man I gotta watch, because he knows how good he is at this track. He also knows he's second in the championship points. Right now he's looking at his backside of his car.
A move on the inside by the two of Thomas Scheckter going underneath Buddy Rice. And here we come back onto the main portion of the racetrack, headed towards turns 10 and 11. A fast section here.
Well, Scheckter started 13th. Buddy Rice started a lot more further up than that, and Buddy's been going backwards. We'll get the run order here as it's Helio Castroneves, Scott Dixon, Dario Franchitti, Tony Kanaan, Marco Andretti, your top 5.
So watch out the back of Marco Andretti's car right now, looking back towards Vitor Meira, who so desperately wants to win at any course, an oval or road course, but a road course specialist he is, and this is probably a track where he would have some of his best opportunity.
Into the bus stop chicane.
A little bit of defensive move by Castroneves there. Marty running the inside line because out of turns 2, 3, and 4, Scott Dixon got a run going down the straightaway. Now, the question is the Helio Castroneves machine got a little bit more downforce, more wing angle on his car, allowing him to get through the turns a little bit better. And the Dixon machine maybe not running as much downforce, allowing him to go down the straightaways a little bit quicker. We'll have to see if that happens again next time down the backstretch.
Buddy Rice started this race in 7th. Did not run real well in the morning practice. He's already dropped back to 12th. What's going on with Buddy, Jack?
Well, their crew doesn't really know what's going on for the A1 Team USA operation. Buddy Rice has not said anything on the radio. The telemetry reads everything beyond nominal, and they're just as confused and concerned as you guys upstairs.
And he's losing contact with the car in front of him, which is Thomas Scheckter. We saw that pass. Here come the leaders into turn 11 as we are about to complete lap 2 of 60 here at the Glen. Take a look a little bit further back. You've got Vitor Meira and Sam Hornish. Meira is 6th. Hornish has dropped all the way back to 8th. Remember, he started 5th. There's Sam. So another guy that's backing up.
Well, you know, he did really a great run to be in the top 6 and go through that little qualifying shootout that the IRL runs right now. Not something you would really expect from a guy that doesn't have a lot of IndyCar experience on road courses.
Fast time is a 94.1.
That 94.1 means 1 minute 34.1 seconds, and that's the best lap by Helio Castroneves, the race leader.
And the reason he's getting that information is because each driver goes across the stripe, and because of their dash that's in front of them, they know exactly their speed of going around. So when they get told the leader's running a 1:34.1, they can look down and see their time and figure out how slow they're going compared to the leader.
Well, Dan Wheldon started this race 10th. He's one of the guys that's moving forward. He has moved himself into 7th position ahead of Sam Hornish. Let's get more from Vince Welch.
Well, he has indeed picked up 3 spots, Marty, and Dan Wheldon was not happy with his race car in the morning practice. The back end kept feeling as though it was preparing to jump out from him, and he just did not have the confidence in the car. Hornish just got by him right there, so handling was going to be one of the keys for Wheldon here in the early going. They made some significant changes in the car from the morning practice, but as you can see, it looks like he's having some trouble out there on the course now.
Well, Vince, I'm going to have to say that maybe he didn't like those changes so much, because in the situation there. Once Hornish got by, Darren Manning actually took advantage of that also. And right behind him is Kosuke Masura, who's actually starting to have a look at the rear tail light of Dan Weldon.
+2, Masura.
So Weldon drops down to 9th, move Hornish back to 7th, Darren Manning in 8th. Let's get more from Jack Arute.
Well, believe it or not, fellas, Darren Manning struggled off the trailer, struggled through the first day of practice. Why? Because, and I quote, A.J. Foyt decided to use some radical approaches to road racing here. What they eventually got back to was a baseline that they established in their great run in St. Petersburg. I asked Darren in the last practice what they added to it. He said some of the things we learned in Mid-Ohio's test session.
And he ran very well there. And remember, he ran very well at St. Petersburg until, you know, that late race incident.
Well, that's because the steering was so heavy. He actually tried to get through the turn and couldn't make the turn in time and spun the car. It's just because of the physical effort that takes on the steering wheel.
So we're at Watkins Glen, the 3.37-mile road course. It's the 10th race of the year. And there is Helio Castroneves out in front. There's your top 5. And as we go side by side, you won't miss a thing. Helio Castroneves looking for his first win here at the Glen. Back here at Watkins Glen, where Helio Castroneves continues to lead Scott Dixon. You know, Helio's now led the opening laps in 5 of the 9 races this year, but that shows how, I guess, deceiving they can be sometimes, statistics that is. Let's talk about the most prestigious golf championship in the world. It returns to ABC Saturday, July 21st. Defending champion Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, and Ernie Els charge into Scotland to battle Carnoustie. It's the British Open on ABC, Saturday the 21st at 9 a.m. Eastern, Sunday, July 22nd at 8 Eastern. That's 8 a.m., I should say. And we saw A.J. Foyt, the 4th, out there for a moment. They streak by the start-finish line. Helio Castroneves' gap now is 0.7 of a second over Scott Dixon. And Scott, why don't we go on board with Scott Dixon?
As he's starting to chase down Helio Castroneves, he's flat on the gas going through the segment here. And what he's going to try and do is go as far deep down into the braking zone, going down to the bus stop as possible. He'll flare out to the left-hand side here, try to get a little bit of a draft off the Team Penske car straight ahead. And this is where he tries to make up time, get down in the braking zone, get back on the gas, maybe before Helio does, try to maybe gain a half a car length, maybe a car length. And as we bend around turn 5 here, and coming from the original track down to the boot, down towards turn 6, listen to the throttle.
In fact, let's just go along for the ride for a while. Enjoy it. We continue and conclude another lap. That's lap 7 of 60. Of course, Scott Dixon loves the road courses. We talked to him about it before the race.
I love these road courses. I love the fact that we've added, you know, sort of another 2 or 3 this year. But just look forward to it. You know, I think it's always a circuit that our team, the 9-car side, goes to with, you know, our heads very high. And knowing that we're going to be hard to beat there, and this year, you know, I don't see it any different. It's definitely, you know, where we need to start gaining on AGR.
And Scott Dixon right now running second to Helio Castroneves here on lap 7. You can see in 7 starts on the road courses, he has 2 wins, both of them here at Watkins Glen, and has led 110 laps.
When we talk about these guys just trying to gain a little bit of time on each other, I'll tell you something, these times are so close right now. A 1:31.5 for Castroneves and a 1:31.6 for Dixon. So just a 1/10 of a second difference. That's all we're talking about.
Vince, you've got more on Scott?
Well, Scott Dixon won this race in 2005 and last year. He's one of the 2 years that the series has held the event here. Both years in which he won the race here, he did so in a Panos chassis. Today he drives a Dallara chassis. He talked about the differences with me this morning. He said the Dallara feels like it's a little more grippy in the front of the car, but overall he's found it to be a little more difficult to drive. You wouldn't know it from the looks of the way he's driven the car this weekend. He's been very good.
Take a look at the field come through here at lap 8 of 60. It's Helio Castroneves, Scott Dixon, Dario Franchitti, Tony Kanaan. There's Marco Andretti and Vitor Meira. Let's welcome all of you that are joining us here on the Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix at the top of the hour. I'm Marty Reed along with Scott Goodyear. Down in pit lane, we've got Jack Arute, Vince Welch, and Brian Pedigo. And there is Jeff Simmons. He's got a good little battle going with his Rahal Letterman teammate, Scott Sharp. They're running well back in the pack, 14th and 15th. But Simmons has been going after him, trying to close that gap. He got a little closer. Now he's falling back a bit.
You know, you talk about a driver who's really just found bad luck anywhere that it's been on the track so far this year. That's Jeff Simmons. His best finish is a 6th at Texas. And right now with his teammate in front of him on the Rahal Letterman team, Scott Sharp, you know, I thought they might run a little bit stronger here. And Sharp, at 39 years of age, has taken his fitness level to a whole new high, if you will, simply from the fact that he is training as hard as we have ever seen him train, and he actually has brought a doctor with him, Dr. John Galletti, here to the racetrack, and really goes to sleep for an hour in oxygen tent, just to really help himself get ready for the rigors here at Watkins Glen.
Scott, what I'm noticing, we've got a camera. It looks like Scott Sharp's team is laid out and ready for a pit stop. There's Bobby Rahal, and we're only working lap 8, and the window is somewhere between 18 and 23.
Well, obviously they got to do something to maybe improve the speed of the car. Maybe there's something that Scott's not very happy with the car right now. They'll put themselves out of sequence a little bit. And
copy, front wing.
So there you hear some front wing. So he must be really struggling with the car to take this opportunity now to come in, because he knows the speed's not up.
Now. Watch your speed coming in.
Brian Pedigo is in Scott Sharp's pit.
As Scott Sharp is pulling into his pit stall, guys, they are making no changes to the car at all. This is simply a strategic move to try to gain position if, for some reason, there would be a full course yellow in the race. That way he would gain positions over the leaders. Looks like they're just changing tires, adding the fuel in. He is out.
Well, Brian, we did see a change on the right front wing, Scott.
And he mentioned that on the radio on the way in, that he was yelling for some change on the front wing whatsoever. It looked like they were trying to put some more wing angle in to give him some more grip on the front wing itself to help him turn into the turns.
And we saw 2 turns. We should explain 2 turns on a road course is a lot different than 2 turns on an oval.
And the driver makes the decision on really how much he wants on the car, because there's so many varied turns here on this particular road course. It's much different than, say, 2 turns that are pretty similar to each other on an oval track.
Well, we are going to have to step aside and go side by side, but as we do that, of course, we're at famed Watkins Glen, where it is, well, one of the most storied racetracks. Jimmy Clark won here 3 times. Back here at Watkins Glen, where Helio Castroneves has led from the drop of the green flag. Scott Dixon second, Dario Franchitti third. We want to remind you, Nashville, there have been 6 different races with 6 different winners. Will there be a 7th next week? Well, that Firestone IndyCar 200 at Nashville will be on ESPN Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern. And we mentioned the fact the top 3, and that man in 3rd place, Dario Franchitti, the points leader. And we also mentioned the Flying Scott, Jimmy Clark, won here at 3 different times. Dario, of course, a big historian of the sport, and would love to follow that accomplishment. In fact, it was 1966. Jimmy Clark won by over a lap here at the Glen. And while all this is going on, Jeff Simmons is making a pit stop as well. So both Rahal Letterman cars have come off sequence.
Now, we did hear there might be a hint of some rain coming in sometime around 5:30, but I don't know if I'm believing the weathermen, Marty, because it's sun shining, it's bright, and I know it's a long time off from right now. We're in a valley and things can blow in, but I'm not sure if that's going to play into it.
Let's get more from Jack Arute on the weather forecast.
Well, I'm not a weatherman, Marty, but it was amazing when all of a sudden at about 12 noon or so, some of that green showed up on the weather radar. Teams scurried around to the Firestone garages to have more rain tires mounted. They actually dispatched a team member out onto pit road. As you know, most of the telemetry on the other side, they have real-time radar. The latest real-time radar that is showing no green, and all of a sudden, all of these Firestone Firehawk rain tires that have been mounted have moved way to the back side of each of the respective pits.
All right. Thanks a lot. And as we go on more with Scott Dixon, he's still in second place. The margin is about 1 second now between first and second. And there's Dario Franchitti closing down on Scott. You know, we talked to Michael Andretti about the enthusiasm, the renewed enthusiasm that Dario has now that he has the points lead.
When Dario smells that he can be at the top of the chart, he's very strong. And I think last year he lost a little bit of that, you know, because we really weren't a competitive team. But this year, you know, he felt with all the things that we did over the winter that he was going to be quick right away, and he was. And, you know, and I think that's what has kept him motivated, because he knows he has the equipment to get it done. So as long as he knows that, he's going to be tough.
And winning the Indianapolis 500 certainly had a lot to do with the boost in confidence for Dario Franchitti as well. In fact, earlier this week, he picked up his Indy 500 pace car, which each year the winner receives. Says he'll rarely drive it, but he'll always cherish it as a reminder of his biggest IndyCar win. Right now, he says the car is good. They'll be looking to pit in about 2 to 3 laps. No changes expected for the 27 car.
Well, going back to what Michael also said, you know, they did not have a great year last year, and this was one of the races that was epitomized it. I mean, Dario Franchitti had a crash with Thomas Scheckter. Tony Kanaan crashed. Marco crashed, as you saw in the beginning of the show, with Eddie Cheever. It was a lousy day for that team.
Not a very good day, as you mentioned. I always say what a difference a year makes, and we see Michael Andretti on the right-hand side of the screen, one of the 3 owners of Andretti Green Racing. But with pit stops coming up, Marty, it's going to be interesting now to see if anybody has anything left of these top 3 guys to maybe increase their gap between the car behind them before they come into the pit lane. This is what drivers get paid a lot of money for right now, what we call the in-lap and the out-lap. These drivers on old tires with light fuel load, they really have to drive these cars aggressively and try to really stretch out an extra half a second if they can from the driver behind. Allows them some real comfort time of getting into the pit lane, getting the Ford Firestone tires on, 22 gallons of ethanol fuel, and then the outlap there again is very important. Some people that are very good at that, guys like Tony Kanaan again, that really are just very strong in in-laps and outlaps. Those are times that you can actually make up times to your competitor. And there again, you have to have a flawless stop. A lot of pressure on the crew during these pit stops here at a place like Watkins Glen.
That is turn 9, heading for turn 10, another left-hander. The top 3 have sort of pulled away from 4th place, Tony Kanaan. And there you see the top 3 from up above, looking down, and they make it onto the front straightaway. And let's show you how far back it is to Tony.
Pit on this lap.
There's the instructions, good in lap. Just reinforcing how important it is to make no mistakes here. You know, on an oval, there's a turn at both ends. Maybe you can make one mistake and you might go in there a little bit strong or a little bit high and maybe kill your lap time as it will. But here at a road course at this particular place, 11 turns, 11 chances to make mistakes each and every lap going around here.
And you saw that it's about a 7.5 second gap back to 4th place, and the pit stops are continuing. There's Kosuke Matsuura on the right side of your screen. Kosuke came into the pits in 13th position. Meanwhile, out on the track, that's Tony Kanaan. Here's the 3 race leaders, and you heard the radio from Scott Dixon, that good in-lap, so we're expecting him into the pits this next time by. We can tell you Danica Patrick's team is also set up and ready for a stop. Dario Franchitti still closing that gap through the boot section. But then on the front straightaway, it looks like Dixon can pull away from Franchitti. So again, going back to what you were talking about downforce.
It'll be interesting to see if any changes are made on these top 3 cars, either with tire pressures or wing angles, when all 3 of them come in to make their first stop.
Okay, so who peels off, who stays out? Well, look at this. The three race leaders are going to come in together. Vince Welch, they're heading your way.
They're giving you room here, Scott.
Elio Castroneves will be the first to hit his pit box. They will make no chassis adjustments on the 3 car. And Scott Goodyear mentioned the pit crew members having to have their best days today. And Penske has a couple of the best on the outside, with Rick Reineman on the outside front and Eric Prentice on the outside rear. And they reminded Elio not to speed in the pits, a little slow getting out for Castroneves. There's Dario Franchitti in the front. They were not making any chassis adjustments either as Franchitti moves away, and Tony Kanaan was pitting right behind.
So it looks like Elio Castroneves was able to get out of the pits first, but Marco Andretti stayed out on course, so he is your new race leader. Jack?
Well, Buddy Rice, no changes surprisingly on the car. Just took on 22 gallons of fuel and new tires. This is a team, fellas, that's working with heavy hearts. They have a crew member, Rodney Garnett, was injured in a fiery boating accident on the 4th of July and is recovering in a Florida hospital. They sent their best wishes.
And we do too. Thanks for the update, Jack. You're on board with Marco Andretti. He is in the race lead right now, but remember, he has not made his stop. What interests me, Scott, is everybody was telling us anywhere between 18 and 23 laps, and here we are on lap 15 when they make their stops.
Well, not getting as good a fuel mileage as everybody anticipated coming here. Remember, running ethanol fuel right now. The tanks have shrunk down to 22 gallons instead of using 30 when we ran ethanol. Kyle Moyer rating to Marco. Time for Marco to come in. Down to 60 miles an hour by the cones.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Marco Andretti, his pitch just before the start-finish line. Kyle Moyer vectoring him in. He comes to the stop. Now, Marco likes his car. He said, in fact, he didn't really want any major changes, maybe a quarter of a pound in terms of tire pressure. There are no changes. He gained some track position at 60 miles an hour.
You hear Kyle getting all the instructions. Watch the pit exit.
This pit exit is very tricky, Marty. That small little road, and it drops down on the exit, and you have to meet up on that short chute between turns 1 and 2. Seen many instances there before. A little defensive driving right now by Elio Castroneves. Dixon looking, hopefully on the inside. Got forced to the outside. You can hear the spotters. There's generally 2 spotters around this circuit, one up front and one down the back section to communicate with their drivers. Now, was there any changes there on those 2 cars? Is Dixon a little quicker? I guess we're going to see in the next few laps.
Well, we're going to step aside for a station break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the fuel strategy, because do the math. 15 laps into 60. That means somebody could be running out near the end. We'll be back after this from our ABC stations. Back here at Watkins Glen, where you see a very tight battle now for the race lead, as Scott Dixon has closed the gap on Elio Castroneves after our first round of pit stops. It's a lot further back now to 3rd place, about 3.3 seconds to Dario Franchitti.
Here we go, each and every time. Sorry, Marty, he has a look on the inside.
And it costs him coming out of the chicane, because he's done that 2 laps in a row and not been able to seal the deal.
So his goal is to be able to get out of turn 1 just a little bit faster than what he's doing now. The 9 car of Scott Dixon that we're on board with, so he can have a run sooner going through turns 2, 3, and 4 on the 3 car of Elio Castroneves, which is the car just up in front. You know, we were presuming that maybe the Team Penske machine maybe has a little bit more downforce on the car, which makes it easier to drive the car through the turns than the 9 car of Scott Dixon, because Dixon certainly is faster going down the straightaway.
So they come through. That's turn 9, heading towards turn 10. Always trying to give you some perspective on this 3.3 mile racetrack. They make their way back. Oh, and Elio crashes again!
Up on the curbing and just spins the car around.
The bad luck continues. Let's listen.
Elio, you okay?
Now he's actually being radioed to, but his steering wheel is off, and that's where the radio communications go from the driver.
And there is a fire in the back of that race car, and I don't blame him for getting out of there. Delphi safety team on the scene already, and they'll go to work. And a very angry and frustrated Helio Castroneves. The bad luck continues. Here it is.
And something looks like the car's often askew already when he's actually going into the middle of the turn. He comes out of the apex, going through phase 3, as we call it, towards phase 4. And then the car just seems to step out on him. Now, it's going down towards the apex. You see the car just start to step out a little bit. And it looks like, is there something possibly on that left rear tire that causes the back end to come out? Maybe an oil leak or something like that? We can only just suppose because we really don't know. But, you know, Helio Castroneves does not make mistakes. Now, let's watch the car on the front of the screen. Through the turn as normal. Now, there was no problem with the track, really, because if that was something on the track, then you would expect Dario Franchitti to run into the same fate that Scott Dixon did.
Dixon avoided it. From this angle, watch Franchitti. He's going to run through the debris.
And I said Scott Dixon. I meant Helio Castroneves, obviously.
All right, let's go on board with Dixon. Real time, just listen. Just that fast. Take one
so
more.
Castroneves is through first. And as we mentioned, if there is something on the track, then you would expect Dixon to probably have the same problem.
All right, let's check in with Jack Arute.
Helio, what happened?
I have no idea. He keep telling me that I hold my line, hold my line. It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm trying to hold my line. But, I mean, you want to give him the pass for him? I'm fine. I'll give it to him. But it's ridiculous. All of a sudden, I'm pushing, and led to a mistake.
Vince?
Tim Cindric, did you guys make any changes with the car the first time around? Was he having any handling issues?
No, the car felt really good. You know, the first stop, we had a great first stop, and you know, obviously Dixon's good as well. And no, I think that just watching the replay there, it looked like maybe the patch caught us out, you know, going across there. But you know, I got to hand it to Helio. You don't see that. He's driven for us for a long time, and you don't see that type of thing. So, you know, I haven't talked to him yet. He didn't say anything on the radio, but that's racing some days.
Tim, 5 races in a row, this team has, in some description, shot itself in the foot. How do you get back on track?
Well, I think you just keep doing what we do. You know, you look at the races that we've had, and, you know, a lot of things have been unfortunate for us. You know, obviously, Milwaukee's one that we want back, but after that, I mean, we're get collected in different accidents and that type of thing. So, you know, I know we have the right team. We've shown that before. So, you know, we just have to keep our heads up and go to the next one.
Another tough day for the 3-car. Marty?
Vince mentioned the 5 races. At Milwaukee, it was a collapsed wing. At Texas, he was involved in a big crash there. At Iowa, he spun coming out of the pits. Richmond, he was penalized. Today, crashes right there while leading. We're going to step aside as you get another view. And Helio Castroneves, the first time in a long time we haven't seen him with a smile on his face. We're under our first caution here at Watkins Glen for a crash involving Helio Castroneves. And there is Marco Andretti. He peeled off to make a pit stop. It looks like everybody else in the lead group has stayed out. Jack?
And they had a little trouble. Kyle Moyer had trouble communicating on this massive course to get his driver in on this pit stop. Now watch the front tire changers. They're going to add a little front wing. They've already done it. No, they didn't. And they had told Marco Andretti they were going to add front wing. As he peeled off, he raised his hand asking, why didn't you give me more front wing? So obvious, a miscue by the Marco Andretti team.
And Danica Patrick gets out in front of him, so it will be Danica leading the way from the 2 from Andretti Green Racing. They'll catch back up to the field under our first caution as we're working lap 22 of 60. We'll go side by side. You won't miss a thing here at the Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix. Scott Dixon in a familiar spot at the Glen. We've just gone back to green flag racing here at Watkins Glen. You didn't miss a thing because of side by side. You're on board right now with Marco Andretti. It's Danica Patrick right in front of him. Danica had gotten around Thomas Scheckter, and so did Marco. There you see the log jam behind him. And they're on board with Jeff Simmons as they head into 7. Boy, there is Buddy Rice. He has fallen like a rock. He's 14th right now as you're on board with Buddy.
You know, that I don't understand because he was so looking forward to this track. So strong here all the time, a road course specialist. And the team itself has actually been finishing very well. Ryan Reinbold here last year finished 3rd with Ryan Briscoe aboard their machine.
On a spin by A.J. Foyt the 4th, and that looks like it's in turn number 8 again, where he spun during practice and crashed. And they're going to go full course yellow again. And yes, although the outcome this time is a lot better than the practice, where he balled it up pretty good.
Well, and they need to do that because where he is, he's on the exit of the turn. And drivers are going in there. It's somewhat a blind turn, as you can see it right now. You go in there, you can't see what's around there until you actually are right along the straightaway. And he himself is going to be high-sided, I believe, on this curb, not allowing him to move. Plus, the car is stalled. And that is right on the exit on the left-hand side. So smart move for a full course yellow.
All right, so we're under our second full course caution at lap 24 of 60. We're getting close to the midway point. Let's take a look at our Honda lap leaders. Elio Castroneves led the first 19. Scott Dixon has led the last 5. And of course, Elio crashed out. That's his 4th DNF in 8 IndyCar road course races. All of them now have been by crashes. Let's check in with Jack Arute.
Guys, remember Marco Andretti came into the pit stall just before the restart that ended up in this caution period with A.J. Foyt IV. He raised his hand wanting to know what happened during that pit stop. Listen into the conversation between himself and his tactician, Kyle Moyer.
Okay, Marco, here's the deal. I need you to save as much fuel as possible, We're going to do this on one more stop. One more stop. Everybody else will have to do it on 2 except for the people that stop. That includes Danica in front of you. Is Danica for position? Yes, Danica is for position.
And they went and talked to Danica, Patrick, and suggested that maybe if Marco was faster that she'd give way to her teammate. You saw in that restart that Danica wanted nothing to do with that. What I find interesting, fellas, as frustrated as Marco Andretti was about the absence of the wing change, his spirits changed considerably once he was given an inside tactic that may catapult him to victory. Only one more stop for this team.
Well, and we're starting to rack up some yellow flag laps, which will help in that effort.
And the other thing that helps in that also is the driver can help the fuel mileage by going into another gear sooner than he would do. Maybe not using up all the RPMs available to them. Now here, the pit lane is open. Opportunity for everybody to turn around, service their car. Vince Welch.
Scott Dixon is leading the way. There's Dario Franchitti, the second one through, and Tony Kanaan is third. The top 3 cars all going to be hitting their spots. No one expected to make changes, although Kanaan may take an adjustment out that he made in the first stop, but they were still trying to decide that. There you see the Chip Ganassi racing car of Scott Dixon. Which one will get first? It's Dixon first. Kanaan beats Franchitti out, so a good stop for the Kanaan group.
And we should point out that Vitor Meira stayed out, and there's the race off pit road. Kanaan picks up 1, Franchitti loses 1, as Vitor made his last pit stop on lap 16. We're working lap 25, so he's gambling that something else is going to happen.
Well, once you start to have yellows in a race, usually, what's the saying go? Yellow breeds yellows, and I think this is a situation that we're going to see right now. So even though you cannot run lean on the fuel mixture any longer, Honda's implemented just 1% of fuel or 100% fuel, so you can no longer run 98 or 95 and just run a little bit lean, safe fuel. What they're having to do now is the driver's in charge of trying to save a little bit of fuel, as you started to mention, just by shifting up a little bit sooner than you would do. Maybe not using 10,300 RPM, maybe using 10,000 RPM, short shifting as we call it, and taking the opportunity to maybe get on the throttle a little softer and get through the turns a little easier and still not be that far off a lap time, Marty, but then saving fuel is the key thing.
Let's check in with Brianne Pettigo.
Well, guys, there's some confusion down here in the Panther pit, and it's due to radio communication problems. Vitor was supposed to come in on that last lap where everyone else was pitting, but he didn't hear JB call and say to come in. Now they can't get him to recognize that he's heard them stay out, so they're not sure if he's coming in or not.
And the reference to JB is team owner John Barnes. Let's check in with Jack Arute.
Scott, you make a very valid point about short shifting and trying to do things under green flag conditions, but one thing that some of these teams have begun to do as well is try to increase the fuel mileage under conditions that we are in right now, under caution conditions. They've actually gone to school just a bit, reading telemetry and seeing. And guess who aced the course the best? Dario Franchitti. Engineers have told me Franchitti is the best at being able to negotiate the changes in topography here and not get on the throttle and eat up a lot of fuel. Vince?
Guys, during that pit stop, we saw that Dario Franchitti lost a spot in the pit lane. They did not make changes. Kanaan didn't make any changes. Dixon didn't make changes, nor did Franchitti, but they were slow on the outside rear getting that tire change. That's been an issue with this team this year. 5 different outside rear tire changers in 10 races.
You heard the call just as Vince finished up. We're back to green flag racing here at Watkins Glen. Scott Dixon. You're clear. Tony Kanaan, Dario Franchitti. That's Sarah Fisher. Look out!
This is the traffic situation. The fast guys are at the back because of the pit stops. Sarah Fisher is down 1 lap. She'll try and move over to the left and let this group go through. Will Kanaan be able to take advantage?
You're on board with Scott Dixon. All 3 of them make it through. Dixon, Kanaan, Franchitti.
Rush hour traffic coming down to a 1-lane bus stop, as we call it.
And then that's Sam Hornish trying to get around Sarah now. Sarah's just holding her line, but it's opening up a bit of a gap between Hornish and Kanaan. Let's point out, while all this is going on, there is Jeff Simmons. He's one of the cars that stayed out. He moved up to 6th. That's Ed Carpenter right in front of him, who also stayed out. Let's reset the entire top 6. It's Vitor Meira, Dan Weldon, Danica Patrick, Marco Andretti, Ed Carpenter, Jeff Simmons. They all stayed out, as did Buddy Rice, who's running in 7th. They had already made their pit stops earlier. And there's Carpenter and Simmons coming on through. Buddy Rice right there, and there is Dixon in 8th position, followed by Kanaan and Franchitti. So that gives you an idea now of what these guys have to work on to get back up to the front.
And it all comes with timing. They hope that they catch the traffic in a situation where it doesn't slow their pace down too much when they try to get back past the cars that they're lapping. Under braking, as we see right here, is a prime opportunity. That Simmons going underneath Carpenter. Now Simmons has actually had a lot of success here at this particular track. He's won a couple of Barber Saab races back in 1999 era, won the championship 2 years in a row, and won the championship and settled it here at this particular track 1 year.
Well, a lot of slicing and dicing down that back stretch. That's Buddy Rice looking to the inside in the 15 car.
Oh,
hang on.
And right back behind all those is the leaders just trying to get by.
And that's Sam Hornish. He is pulled up right behind Dario Franchitti. On board with Buddy Rice. Looking back on Scott Dixon. That's turn 6. Coming down towards the toe of the boot. Turn number 7. That 14 car, that of course belonging to Darren Manning, he made a pit stop. He's right behind Hornish. That's all for position, folks. In fact, only 1 car still out on the track is not on the lead lap. That is Sarah Fisher.
Now in this situation, how does the car from behind get past? Well, what they're hoping is the situation with Darren Manning starting to look on the inside of the Team Penske machine of Sam Hornish Jr. But Sam keeps his speed up, keeps Darren Manning behind him. But what the driver's hoping is that the car in front just wiggles a little bit or catches a curb or makes a mistake and comes off the corner slow, allowing you to take the opportunity to draft and then have the opportunity to pass going down to the next turn.
You heard the radio on Sam Hornish's team telling him how far ahead, by 4 car lengths, he was. Meanwhile, that's the action still going on as that's Ed Carpenter under attack from Scott Dixon.
Tough for Dixon. He's on the inside line here, but he gets it done. Swerves in front of Carpenter to help himself get the right line going into the bus stop.
And then Kanaan, Franchitti, Hornish, and that whole group gets caught behind the slower car of Ed Carpenter.
Will they try it on the downhill here going to 6? Can't get it done.
So Dixon gets a little more leg room.
And this is where he looks in his mirror, Marty, and goes, thank you, Ed Carpenter.
And Ed's just trying to run his race. I mean, he is in 6th position right now. He doesn't have to give up that spot. Look at this, the teammates looking at each other. That's Franchitti heading for turn 8. That's a right-hander.
Oh, and that's a tough one. So bumpy in that section there. That's where we saw the 22 of A.J. Foyt, the 4th, spin out.
Well, if anybody's on a fuel-saving strategy, I don't think they're following instructions very well.
Well, that's the tough thing, you know, because you're not leaning it down, as we said before. That's not available to you any longer. So now you have to really just sort of gingerly get on the throttle, short shift, as we were mentioning, and it's tough to do as a race driver. Watch the draft right now where 27 of Franchitti looking to the inside.
10 seconds, that's the boy.
That's Franchitti getting around the 20 of Ed Carpenter. So as you see going down the back stretch there, the race lead is held by Vitor Meira as he has got about a 1.4 second lead over Dan Weldon. Danica Patrick is up to third. Marco Andretti is fourth. Jeff Simmons is fifth. We'll be back after this from our ABC stations. The Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix, brought to you by Camping World, America's outdoor store. Firestone, the first name in Indy racing, and Honda with an innovative selection of motorcycles, power equipment, and automobiles. Honda, the power of dreams. Back here at Watkins Glen International, take a look at your race leader, Vitor Meira. 7 times he has finished second in this series. He has never won a race, but he's now led 7 of 31 laps, and he leads by 1.6 seconds over Dan Weldon. Danica Patrick is another second back in third. There you see her in the black and blue, number 7. And there is Marco Andretti coming through right behind her in fourth. Jeff Simmons rounds out your top 5. This all being after a series of pit stops due to 2 cautions that we have had. It's almost back-to-back here at Watkins Glen. It's got a few cars out of sequence, but not by that many laps. It could get very interesting. There is Scott Dixon, who has led quite a bit of laps here once Elio Castroneves went out with his crash. Starting Tuesday, July 17th, the next generation of hidden camera comedy comes to ABC. It's outrageous, unpredictable, it's real, and it's funny. It's just for laughs. Series premiere Tuesday, July 17th, 8, 7 Central, only on ABC. All right, we're holding our cameras there. That man right there, Sam Hornish, right now he is running in the 9th position. And here's how he got around Tony Kanaan.
Coming down here, having a look on the inside of the 7-Eleven car. They're slowing just a little bit because of the car in front of them, the 20 car of Ed Carpenter. Now see the Team Penske machine on the inside trying to get through. Says, pardon me, excuse me, I'm on my way through here on a very fast downhill left-hander, turn 6.
So Hornish picked up 9th. Darren Manning followed for 10th. Ed Carpenter's now 11th, and Tony Kanaan is 12th. Let's check in with Vince Welch.
George Klotz, who handles the strategy for Tony Kanaan. Looks like Vitor Meira is running out of fuel. We'll grab George here in just a moment.
Oh, no.
10-4.
Well, you know, Vitor.
Try to find one of those places they'll tow you in.
Last pitted on lap 16.
So here we are on lap 32. That means 16 laps, and he's out of fuel.
Yeah, we need a they've got local yellows in there right now, and he's asking for a full course yellow to slow the pace down because as a driver, you know you're in a very precarious position. You don't want somebody coming around the turn or over the brow and just plowing into the back of you.
So Dan Weldon will now inherit the race lead as there is Vitor Meira, and it looks like as he shakes his head, another opportunity at winning has gone up without any fuel. We'll go side by side. The most prestigious golf championship in the world returns to ABC Saturday, July 21st. It's the British Open. Defending champion is Tiger Woods. July 21st at 9 a.m. Eastern, and Sunday, July 22nd, 8 a.m. Eastern on ABC. Let's check in with Brianne Pettigo.
Guys, I caught up with a disappointed John Barnes. John, can you tell us how this happened?
We lost telemetry after about 8 laps during the race, so the engineers were guessing on the fuel mileage where it was, and we missed it by a lap.
I know you had some radio communication problems going on. Did that play into this at all?
Well, if we'd have stopped when we asked him to, it wouldn't have happened. Thank you.
Unfortunate day for Panthers.
And this is not something that happened just to their team. Radio communications, you got to remember, this is 3.37 miles with a lot of varying undulation in the ground topography. As here we go with pit stops, and it looks like Dan Wheldon is coming in, and Jack Arute has got Danica Patrick right behind.
Right behind her. Danica Patrick will be the first of the front runners to hit her marks. Danica Patrick has been running very good, strong enough that they have waved off Marco Andretti's attempt, but they needed this pit stop. And Vince Welch, they needed it just as bad as your guy did.
That's right. Dan Wheldon was within 2 laps of needing to pit, so that yellow was perfect for Wheldon. Now they're having a problem. They were not going to change anything on the car, but as you saw, they were having trouble with it looked like the air jack and trying to get the right rear or the left rear on. So a costly pit stop for Dan Wheldon.
You saw they had the hand jack underneath in the back.
And sometimes when those pneumatic jacks don't end up working, you end up bringing out what they call the quick jack, and that's what they had underneath the back of the car, the chrome long-handled machine that they actually have an opportunity to just raise the back of the car up. Obviously, it just takes more time, and Dan Wheldon has lost track position.
He was the race leader, and we'll figure out where he cycles back into the field. As you can see behind the pace car, everybody lining up, and there is Marco Andretti. It looks like Marco will now be your race leader.
Hey, because of what happened, if you guys need me to adjust my fuel strategy, just let me know.
Dan is asking the situation back to the pit, saying,
keep pushing. Obviously the yellow timing didn't help us there. Just keep pushing.
So he's got the clearance to run as hard as he can. They'll figure out as they go. Want to know if he should affect his strategy, which there again is short shifting and trying to save a little bit of fuel by driving style.
Well, let's figure out some more strategies here. Jack Arute, what's going on?
One group that is going with a strategy that could be a little dicey. Kyle Moyer calls the shots for Marco Andretti. Did not come in. You're going to stick to what you told him on the radio?
Yeah, well, he tried to win, and the only way we're going to get past our teammates and Dixon is to be out in front of them. Right now, we only got to stop once. They have to stop once. They're going to be a couple of laps later than us, but right now, I mean, that's our only chance of winning. That's what we're going to do.
How dicey will it be to make it to the end?
Well, if we could get some more yellow, it would help, but they'll go green soon.
A fortune and my millions for just a couple of more laps of yellow, fellas.
Well, Jack, can you check with him? Because they last pitted on lap 22. How far do they think he can go?
They are halfway through their stint, if you believe that, and they just told Marco that they were halfway through their stint. Got to remember, fellas, that this big racetrack under caution, there's been, and we've all tried to find out, how much mileage can you make under the ethanol here? This is the first time under caution. You talk to guys, and you sometimes, Scott Goodyear, wonder whether they're telling you the truth or not.
Well, I had so many varied answers from one end of the spectrum to the other, Jack. I agree, because, you know, you just couldn't make any sense of what people were telling you. And then I started asking this morning about yellow caution laps, and, you know, you're met with just a smile, and nobody's really going to be honest and tell you, because that comes into their play of how they're going to make this race unfold for them.
Let's check in with Vince.
Guys, we saw that donut on the side of the car of the 7-Eleven machine of Tony Kanaan here with George Klotz, who handles the strategy for TK. George, any problems with the car since the contact with Hornish?
No, I don't think so. Just like 7-Eleven car got tangled with Sam. I don't think there's any damage to the car. He's not reported anything. Everything's pretty good shape here, so we just got to work on getting by those guys that got by us already.
How difficult has the traffic been through? And that seems to be the one complaint from both TK and Dario.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. These cars are so, you know, closely matched that it's hard to get by a guy once you get by, but you know what, we'll do our best. There's a long way to go here.
Got a donut on the car the size of the one that Kanaan has, Scott Goodyear. That can often affect the handling of the car, so maybe a break there for TK.
Well, very lucky to actually hit in the middle of the side pod, Vince. Otherwise, he actually could have broken off some of the wings that they actually used to help make the car stick to the ground.
All right, so while we are under our third caution, continuing here on lap 35 of 60, let's take a look at our ethanol edge. It's focusing on Dan Wheldon as he pitted in first place, came back out in 15th. But remember, you know, he's got a few laps on the people ahead of him as he continues to try and fight his way back towards the front. You know, American road racing was arrived here in Watkins Glen October 2nd in 1948. It was the first road race run since World War II. It was an old 6.6-mile circuit. It ran through the village streets, starting and ending in front of the county courthouse. Now, to close the roads, they had government permits from 6 agencies, the state, the county, including the New York Central Railroad, because you actually flew up and over the tracks. This is something that you, as a citizen, can still do today, and it is a fun ride. But I'm wondering, would you want to drive on this?
I don't think that I would actually do that when you look how narrow it is and the trees on each side. No Armco barriers to hold you from stopping from going actually into the trees themselves. But when you think about the people that competed on tracks like that, you know, back in those days, it was absolutely amazing. The list that have actually raced here is very truly remarkable, like Carlos Rubin, Mario Andretti, Gilles Villeneuve. I mean, the names just keep on going and going.
And there is the Seneca Lodge. A lot of history in this place, too. How about it, Jackaroo?
Oh, yeah, Marty. There's an old tradition with all those names Scott roared about. In fact, the winner would actually go down to the Seneca Lodge and would have beer, toasting him in beer, and their victory laurels and those wreaths would be posted prominently there as everybody celebrated. But you notice that the late Tim Richmond didn't have a victory wreath. Harry Hyde found out that they didn't give victory wreaths, so he went out, pulled a tire off the winning car, and had it dismounted and put it right up on the wall there. Going back to green, guys.
We certainly are here at famed Watkins Glen with your race leader, Marco Andretti, Buddy Rice second, Scott Dixon third, Dario Franchitti, and Sam Hornish rounding out your top 5. Danica Patrick getting around Jeff Simmons into turn 1. You're on board, looking out right off the nose of her car.
Now this is where you want to be flat on the gas all the way through here, this climb up through turns 2, 3, and 4, so you have the opportunity to get a draft from the car in front.
That's A.J. Foyt the 4th right in front of her. And that's A.J. Foyt the 4th going right behind her.
Aboard the Camping World machine. Sponsor race here.
AJ's first trip here to famed Watkins Glen. And, you know, the one guy that had never raced here before, and now we're on board with AJ, as he's being tracked down by Dan Weldon. Sarah Fisher's never raced here. We knew that. And AJ the 4th, we knew that. Darren Manning was the one that surprised me. He had tested here, but he had never raced here until today.
And loves the track. Asked him, he says, man, is this a great facility.
He's currently running in 6th position. There he is in the number 14 of AJ Foyt's entry. And he's tracking down Sam Hornish Jr. right in front of him. Jack?
Well, fellas, A.J. Foyt's ABC Building Supply team had a little bit of a different strategy this weekend. You know, Larry Foyt has been at every single race, calling all the shots. Well, one of the promises A.J. made was that Larry would be able to try and make the Firecracker 400. He did qualify, and you saw it on ESPN, qualify for the rained-out portion of the Busch Series race and was involved in an accident. He jetted in here this morning, and the first thing he said he had to do is he came to me and he says, how's AJ been this weekend? I said, boy, am I glad you're here.
Yeah, he scared the bejesus out of you. Like you thought he had a snake in his hands, and you don't like snakes, Jack. I know that. Everybody's laughing
don't get mad, we'll get even.
Yeah, well, good luck, buddy. Remember, it's AJ you're dealing with. Meanwhile, the race out front, look at Marco Andretti. If he's saving fuel, you're kidding me, because he's pulling away from Buddy Rice. Let's go back on board with Scott Dixon. He's running in 3rd, about 1.2 seconds behind. That's Buddy Rice right in front of him. That's heading down towards the toe of the boot. Turn 7, you climb steep up the hill. Very rough section of the track right here. See the cars bouncing. And then here is turn 8. Now, let's go both views. On the right, you're looking ahead from Scott Dixon towards Buddy Rice. On the left, you're looking back from Buddy. That's Scott.
And what Scott Dixon's going to try to do is to get on the brakes a little later, as we mentioned, to try to take some of that space up between the car in front, which is Buddy Rice. Now, Buddy was not that strong at the beginning of the race, but he seems to have found the pace here now. Finds himself in 2nd place, chasing down Marco Andretti. He's actually looks like he's starting to gain a little bit of space between himself and the 3rd place car of Scott Dixon, the number 9 car on the right-hand side of your screen.
That's through turn 1, heading for the high-speed S's.
Now we've got this whole front group right now, all the way from 1st, all the way through 10th, that all pitted around lap 22 to 25. And then Danica Patrick pitted on lap 34, so it's going to be interesting to see how the strategy plays out. Will we get another yellow, allow these guys to come in and get fuel?
And there you see from Danica Patrick's onboard camera. That was Thomas Schechter she was dueling with. She tried to get underneath him, couldn't get it done. Dan Wheldon right behind her. From high above, you look down at the toe of the boot as the racing action continues here at lap 38 of 60 here at the Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix. We'll step aside as you go side by side. You're riding on board with the race leader, Marco Andretti. The guitar that goes to the winner of the Nashville Firestone IndyCar 200 has been voted one of the 10 coolest trophies in all of sports. Tune in Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN to see who takes home the guitar this year. That's our next stop on tour. Top of the hour, if you join us here at the IndyCar Grand Prix at Watkins Glen, there's our current leader, Marco Andretti. Let's go up to speed. Jagger Root, you're up.
Well, Marco Andretti is making sufficient fuel, and based upon what Kyle Moyer just radioed to his charge that they will pit in 3 more laps, they are right on the cusp of being able to do it in one final pit stop. Buddy Rice is directly behind him, running in the second place, and they are going to pit in the next lap, and they too are going to roll the dice. They say it will be their final stop as well. Vince Welch.
Scott Dixon is currently running third. Dixon is the only driver in the top 6 in the point standings who has not won a race this season, but he's been runner-up 4 times. 2 of those runner-up finishes have come to points leader Dario Franchitti. He doesn't want that to be the case today, although Franchitti is running 1 spot behind. Now, Franchitti is running 4th. By the way, Dixon's scheduled to pit in about 6 laps. Franchitti, on the other hand, is going for a scheduled pit stop in about 3 laps. The car has been very good for Dario. He has not made a single chassis adjustment yet today. Brianne Pettigo?
Well, currently in 5th position is Sam Hornish Jr., who's happy with his car. He is expected to come in about 2 laps for tires and fuel. They don't expect to make any wing adjustments at this time. The man calling the shots for him, of course, is Roger Penske, who's had quite a busy weekend. He's been to 3 races in the past 2 days. But in those other 2 races he's been to, the ALMS race at Lime Rock and the Cup race in Daytona, he finished 1st and 2nd in Lime Rock and 3rd in Daytona. Looking for another solid finish here today.
Well, and just behind is Tony Kanaan in the 711 machine. Kanaan won earlier this season at St. Petersburg, the only other race we've run in this series this season that has been a non-oval. He also has won on the road course at Sonoma. Very confident that he could get into the win column again today. No changes on his car yet this afternoon. Jack Arute?
And Buddy Rice, the first in the lead contingent to pit. No changes on his car except 4 new tires. Now he's got to make sure that he doesn't succumb to exceeding the 60-mile-an-hour speed limit. Meanwhile, Marco Andretti is counting it down. 2 laps before his team will pit.
So there you saw Marco Andretti on board with now Scott Dixon as we've got you caught up with all those positions that we were able to touch base with. In fact, right now, let's go through it. It's Marco, followed by Scott Dixon, Dario Franchitti 3rd, Hornish, Tony Kanaan, Darren Manning now 6th. Kosuke Matsuura has moved up to 7th. Scott Sharp is 8th. Dan Wheldon is 9th. Danica Patrick rounds out your top 10. There is Marco, and the gap is now 2.2 seconds.
He's continuously been able just to stretch his lead a little bit from the cars that are behind him. I've been watching Scott Dixon off in the distance just a little bit. Seems like that back end of the car has been hanging out just a little bit on him. So we also saw Tony Kanaan using up a lot of the road.
And here comes the pit stop for Marco. Jagger.
Yeah, and watch the pit directly in front of him. That's Kosuke Matsuura's crew trying to hold on to tires to give Marco a good in. He does it. And now all of a sudden, it's a key is to be able to get the necessary fuel. They'll need to pack it in to be able to go the distance with the last stop. Let's go to Vince Welch.
Next on this pit stop agenda will be Tony Kanaan. You see his car is in. There will be no changes. They made a tire pressure adjustment on the first change, but no chassis changes today. That's a good sign. They reminded Kanaan, got to have a good out lap.
Danica Patrick also in at lap 43. What potentially could be her last stop. Jack?
Quick stop for Danica Patrick. She hit her marks, and one thing Tim Green told me that she's gotten very good at this season is her out lap. If she can do that now, she might be able to gain some spots, fellas.
Dan Weldon also made his stop, so cycling through to the race lead, guess who? It is Scott Dixon, as he is back in front with Dario Franchitti, the points leader, right behind him. And for Dixon, the 5th road race that he's led in the last 6 starts in the IndyCar Series. Now, he did not lead earlier this year at St. Pete, but he ended up finishing 2nd in that race. And boy, Franchitti is right there, and there's Sam Hornish. And give Sam a tip of the hat. I mean, he is not known for his road racing, but every year he has gotten better and better at it. So he's been working at it hard.
Spending a lot of time on road courses in various different cars. And actually now Dario Franchitti is hit the pit lane. Vince Welsh?
As Dario Franchitti comes in, John Anderson came to his crew members before this stop and went to each and every one of them, encouraging them to have a better stop than they did last time. Told them to shake off the last mistake, come out strong, and have one flawless stop here. It could be the difference in winning this race. Again, no chassis adjustments for Dario Franchitti. His car has been very good all day.
9-second stop, and he has the first stall, so he pulls right back out. So now the pressure on the shoulders of Scott Dixon and Sam Hornish. They have yet to make their stops, as has 3rd place Darren Manning. Those 3 cars last stopped on lap 25. We're working lap 44.
And this is where the drivers, as we mentioned, get paid the money to get the good in-lap right now. What Dixon will be trying to do is just to go a little bit deeper into every turn, get back on the gas a little sooner, just trying to have the best in-lap that he possibly can to maybe give himself a little bit more of a cushion when he gets a service stop done and leaves the pit lane and gets back out onto the racetrack. So I'm using a lot of the curbing there. Coming out of the turn, now he's entering back up into 9, headed towards 10.
And Sam Hornish staying right with him as they come through turn 11. Will Dixon pit? Yes. So he goes 20 laps, some of those under yellow, but here comes Sam Hornish right behind him.
Straight in now, straight in.
Brienne, let's send it down your way.
Sam is pulling into his pit stall right now. They're taking on 4 tires, expected to take on a full load of fuel, but we're going to watch and make sure, see if that's actually the case. Vince?
Watch me. Watch me. Watch me. Watch me. Go, 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 go!
And Sam is away. Vince?
Well, you just saw Scott Dixon pulling away as well. A very good stop for the Target Chip Ganassi crew. Not a single change again on the chassis.
And we can tell you that Darren Manning also made his stop at the same time. So the 3 leaders have peeled in, and that leaves Marco Andretti now to inherit the race lead, with Dario Franchitti shown right now in 2nd place. We'll have to wait till they come across the timing line to make sure it's all sorted out officially. But there is Scott Dixon as he makes his way back through the bus stop chicane.
+4 to the 4, +4 to the 4.
That's +4 to the 4 car. That's the radio traffic that you hear, the words going to Scott Dixon. And there is Marco.
And the 4 car being Vitor Mira, who's actually now been able to get some fuel in the car and back onto the racetrack, but many laps down, 2 laps down, matter of fact.
So Marco Andretti is the man right now that looks like he is going to be the guy to chase. And who has the best fuel? As Scott Dixon has led 8 laps here. And we'll be back with more after this from our ABC stations. The Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix, brought to you by Camping World, America's outdoor store, and Ethanol, America's high-performance renewable fuel. And that's the exterior view of the Seneca Lodge. We showed you the interior a little bit earlier. Take a look at the lead. It's the gap between Scott Dixon on the far right of your screen and Sam Hornish Jr. running in 2nd. Marco Andretti now 3rd after all the pit stops. Dario Franchitti 4th. Ed Carpenter rounds out the top 5. And while we continue to watch Scott Dixon on his way potentially to his 3rd straight win here at the Glen, let's go to our GoDaddy.com trivia question. Before Richmond, when was the last time a Penske or Ganassi car did not lead any laps? And since they're both running 1-2 right now, Scott?
You know, and you asked me that on the way up the elevator to the booth here today, and you didn't give me enough time to go off and check a book, because that one I don't even know. I mean, they've always been just so dominant here in the last little while. I'm not
There you go. 2005. That's amazing.
31 races ago. So that's the answer to our GoDaddy.com trivia question. All right, we did this a little bit earlier in the race. Now that things have settled down and we got to wait to see how this fuel strategy unfolds, let's go on board with our race leader, take you around the entire circuit here at Watkins Glen. We'll just sit back and let you go for the ride.
Firestone telemetry on the right-hand side. Just watch everything that goes along with the RPMs of throttle, how quick you're on and off the brake, gear selection, and the interval at the very top. His space between himself and Sam Hornish Jr. Let's just listen. You heard him on the rev limiter going into turn 11, just at the 10,300 RPM limit, and now back all the way down to turn 1, Marty.
So there's an idea of just how tricky it is to get around this 3.3-mile circuit at Watkins Glen. 11 laps to go with Scott Dixon back in command here for the 3rd year in a row. Take a look at our Honda lap leaders. Helio Castroneves still led the most laps so far at 19. Scott is closing quickly. Marco Andretti, Vito O'Meara, Dan Weldon have also led here at the Glen. We're waiting for Darren Manning to come by. He is now shown currently in 8th position. There is Kosuke Matsuura with Manning right behind him. Fell back a little bit after that last stop. Let's get an update. Jack Arute?
Well, yeah, Marty, sometimes you'd rather be lucky than good. Let's go back to Darren Manning's last pit stop. A.J. Foyt was so very excited about the way his car had been running. If we can take a look at the last pit stop, you'll see that the fuel man had actually inserted the hose. Now watch this. The fueler goes in. It inserts to pack the fuel. They're complete their pit stop. But at this point in time, A.J. Foyt is watching the front tire changer. Now he yells, go, go, go. Darren Manning had enough common sense for one time not to listen to A.J. Foyt and just or at least process it for about 1.5 seconds until the fueler was out.
And let's check in now with Vince Welch with an update on Scott Dixon.
Well, just as Jack Arute was talking about the problems for Darren Manning in his stop, it was just the opposite for Scott Dixon. They did a short fuel because they didn't need a full tank to get to the end here in this pit window, and his team flawlessly executed the tires change and the fuel hose input. It was a great day in the pits for Scott Dixon. As you see Dario Franchitti nearly go off course. Dixon told me before the race today, the key for me is to get out front. He clearly believed that if he got out front in the middle of the late stages of this race, he would be the man to beat.
And here you see Marco taking another look inside. Dario has just gotten around Marco right before turn 1.
It looks like Marco didn't want to even bother trying to get past him on that. He got off the gas. He had a run going on him and looked like he could have dove down the inside. That was a very slow time going through the bus stop and then over through turn 5, and just didn't seem to chase him once he got going down there. Looked like he just let him go, Marty.
Jack, it's getting a little cloudy out here. What's the latest on the weather?
Well, fellas, you got to begin to wonder if Watkins Glen is going to throw some drama to the finish of this race. Look up over the press box and over that grandstand there. There are dark and ominous clouds that are beginning to develop. We have seen them late in the afternoon, and dare I say, Scott Goodyear, we are 15 minutes away from your early race prediction of some precipitation. My experience has shown that sometimes if you wait long enough, the weather will change. Vince?
Well, and Jack Arute, just as you're talking about the weather, the teams for Target Chip Ganassi driver Scott Dixon and also Dario Franchitti start moving their rain tires closer to the wall here. And remember, if you're used to watching the IndyCar Series mainly on ovals, they don't run on in the rain on the ovals, but they certainly do on these road courses, as we saw a year ago.
Yeah, last year was very wet here at the Glen. In fact, turned out to be a timed event at 2 hours and 10 minutes. As Scott Dixon, doesn't matter whether it's dry or wet, he's won here at the Glen 2 years in a row. Can he do it for a third time? Well, let's meet him.
Hello, my name is Scott. I love to do like triathlons and do a lot of cycling, a lot of running, a lot of swimming. I just like to train, especially after you have a bad weekend. It's a good way to get some aggression out. And the competition side of triathlons is very similar to racing. It's yourself putting in the hard work, and you can change the outcome of what you're doing. But they tell me that the older you get, the better you get at triathlons to a certain age. So that's what I'm holding it to.
The laps are winding down and the clouds are getting darker here at Watkins Glen. As you see, Scott Dixon has opened up a now 3.3 second lead over Sam Hornish Jr. But let's give a little tip of the hat to Sam and his road racing effort here, because remember, his best ever on a road course has been 7th twice, and last year here he got down a lap early and ended up 12th.
Amazing when you think of all the big car experience a lot of these other drivers had. And when he went to Penske, they knew they had to help and assist him with that. So they took some old IndyCar chassis, put some really old motors in them, not Honda engines or Toyota engines, but some older engines, and just went and found some places for Sam to go out and run, to put in miles upon miles. And that certainly has helped and assisted him in understanding how these cars work with the downforce and the weight and the horsepower, Marty.
Brienne, you've got more?
Well, I spoke with Sam's chief mechanic earlier today, and he noted that he was so impressed with Sam's ability on this course, given that he hasn't had much experience here and much experience on a road course in general. And Sam has said, too, that the key to this track, to this race, is not only to be fast, but to be consistent. And, guys, that's exactly what he's been today.
And, of course, he celebrated his 28th birthday back on Monday, so this wouldn't be a bad birthday gift to himself, his best finish ever on a road course. Meanwhile, let's drop back a little bit further, pick up Dario Franchitti. There he is, running in third, the points leader. He's never won on a road course in the IndyCar Series. His best was Sonoma last year, finishing second to Marco Andretti, the man who's fourth.
So as Brian mentioned, it's all about consistency, and that's what he's done this year, and that's why he's got a shot for the championship right now, not outside the top 10 either in qualifying or in race results throughout this whole season. That's what's going to help him win championships. Vince Welsh?
Well, that's exactly right, Scott. Franchitti's worst finish this season is 7th. His average result, 2.8. Unbelievable. 10 races into the season, and he's right on that, currently running third. John Anderson, who handles this strategy, told me that the springboard of the success for this season came in the second race this season at St. Petersburg. Dario had contact on the first lap of the race. They fell 2 laps behind. The team was able to get the car repaired, and Dario just kept digging all day long. He never lost his focus. They ended up finishing 5th, got some good points for the championship, and they felt like they all came together at that race, and the momentum started rolling, and of course they finished 3rd the next race, 2nd the next race, and it capped it off, of course, with the win at Indianapolis.
In fact, in his last 6, he hasn't been lower than 4th. Let's talk a little bit about Marco Andretti. His season as a sophomore has been dismal, to say the least, with 6 DNFs, but all of a sudden, the last couple of races, Jack Arute, Marco's coming to life.
And you can see the spring back in Marco Andretti's step. All this weekend, you knew he was so happy to be back here to Watkins Glen. Knew he had a score to settle after the disappointment of 1 year ago. When he went out to qualify, I asked him what it was going to take. He said a perfect lap. He put one of those perfect laps in place. And now Kyle Moyer and this team have put Marco Andretti in a position with 5 laps to go where he could possibly enjoy another back-to-back good finish, another top 5. And for Marco Andretti, the end of the slump, man, he'll tell you, it couldn't come soon enough for him. He's got a smile back on his face.
And Jack, you know what's really interesting? We talked to Michael Andretti about his sophomore season, and there are some striking comparisons.
That's the key to having a father.
I've just pretty much tried to compare his sophomore season to mine. It's pretty similar in a lot of ways. Where the first year everything seemed to just go right and came pretty easy, and then the next year it seemed like everything just went wrong. And you know, I just wanted to try to learn from that experience, and because for me it was a very valuable year from an experience standpoint, and I think that's where Marco is right now.
And here's what we mean. Take a look at this graphic, and you'll see exactly what Michael is talking about in reference to his sophomore season versus Marco's.
Anytime you've had a good first season, anytime you change into a new series or you move up the ladder, as we say, you always want to continue learning and growing. And when you start off and have a great time the first year, boy, it can really have you down the next year. And that's exactly what Marco has done. And I just dropped the wheel off there, pushing the car real hard. We've seen Tony Kanaan ride up over the curbs. These guys are really pushing the cars as quickly and as fast as possible. Marco himself right now is just getting a lot of confidence coming to a racetrack like this. Now let's watch the rear car. Up over the curbing, drops it off the alligator bumps, as we call it, the white curbing, and then in through the dirt.
And Tony Kanaan's behind him going, thanks, teammate. Speaking of the teammates, Dario, Marco, and Tony Kanaan, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And remember, we told you how dismal they had a stop here at Watkins Glen last year where they were all involved in crashes. Jack?
Guys, you listen to Mario Andretti talk about what his sophomore season. What's been fun to watch today is the dad, Michael, critiquing the son, Marco. He's got the luxury of a big screen TV that he can look out across his pit stall and see, and it's a play-by-play that you're getting from Michael Andretti. Well, that was a good corner. Oh, he blew that one. Oh, he's doing this well. He's not saying it to anybody in particular. I think in some cases he's actually playing the role of a cheering father.
There you see Michael on the right side of your screen as the laps continue to wind down here at Watkins Glen. And let's drop a little bit further back to Tony Kanaan as there you see TK closing in on his teammate. You got more on Tony, Vince?
Well, Marty, Tony Kanaan was really hoping to get a win here today. His wife, Danny, is attending her last race of the season. She leaves this week to return home to Brazil, where she'll have their baby in a couple of months. It'll be a baby boy, by the way. TK, who's been supporting his family since he was 13, says he's ready to reach that next phase of his life. Very excited about becoming a dad, but was hoping he could get a win for Danny to send her back home.
Well, he won in Sonoma back in 2005 on the IndyCar circuit. May not happen today. There you see stats. He has 5 top 5s. And as we continue our march back a little further, coming through turn 10, right there is Tony. And where is Buddy Rice? The man in 6th place, a lot further back, about 11 seconds back to be exact. And there he is, but still a very good run for Buddy Rice. Jack?
And maybe the key to this good run, fellas, is the strategy that Dennis Reinbold and John Dick employed. If you notice the beginning of the race, he fell back. He really didn't have a lot to throw out there at the competition. But each and every full course yellow, they brought Buddy Rice in. They short filled him. They made sure that he had new tires. What they tried to do is give him the tools that he would be able to use late in the race. We saw him get as high as lead this race before the last pit stop. This is yet another good performance from this Dreyer and Reinbold team that's starting to reach its stride.
And with that, we return back to the man of the moment, Scott Dixon. 2 years in a row he has won here. It looks like he is on his way to number 3. He has a 5.9 second lead over Sam Hornish Jr. And Vince, you got more?
Well, I asked Scott before the race today, I said, when was the last time you won 3 in a row at the same track? And he smiled. He said, I don't think it's ever happened. Maybe back in the karting days as a kid, but not that he could ever remember, certainly not as a professional. And a win here today, and Dixon would join teammate Dan Weldon as the only IndyCar Series drivers to win 3 straight races at the same venue.
Vince, let me tell you, down my end of the pits, and the white flag is out, we are starting to get some raindrops. It could be a dicey final lap for Scott Dixon and the rest of these IndyCar pilots. It's beginning to spit here on pit road.
Well, if we remember last year, it was an downpour almost at the end of the race, and Scott stayed out on race slicks, tiptoed his way around, and forced everybody else to stay out, and was able to pull off the win. So I don't think a few drops are going to scare this guy from Auckland, New Zealand, the 26-year-old, as he makes it through the bus stop chicane for the last time.
And this is where you just try to hit all your marks, your braking marks, your turn-in marks, your apex and your exit marks, and you're really not trying to really extend yourself too much. You're going to stay off the curbs. You're just going to stay on the racetrack itself and hope that everything is going to go smooth for you in the final lap.
Tony Kanaan has gotten past Marco Andretti, so move TK up to 4th, drop Marco back to 5th. Meanwhile, Scott Dixon. You heard Vince talk about Dan Wheldon. Well, his 3 straight have come at Homestead, Miami Speedway. And for Scott, it looks like it's going to be the hat trick here at Watkins Glen. That's turn 8, only a few more to go. No pressure from behind. All he has to do is manage 2 more corners. Dixon through turn number 10. He's led 133 of 455 laps in the last 6 road course races. He's going to see the checkered flag for the 3rd year in a row at Watkins Glen, the 7th of his career.
Great run. Good job, and the time he stand in the pits today, you guys, exceptional.
And look at, he's not even waiting to take a victory lap. He's down in turn 1 area doing donuts. Vince?
Oh, with a very happy Ron Dixon. Hey, your son does pretty good donuts there.
Yeah, good donuts.
Watching you and Scott's wife, you guys are a nervous wreck during the course of the day. What's it like to be a dad while your son is out there in this great series?
Yeah, it's just a lot of pride. It really is, and it is very nervous. Until it's over, you just can't relax for 1 second, but it's great. It's awesome.
Ron was a racer in his own day, back in the day, but gave up his career to further that of Scott, and it has certainly paid off.
It certainly has, as Scott now makes his victory lap. We'll go side by side. When we come back, it'll be the celebration with the laurel wreath in the winner's circle. Well, we're at an auto race where a hockey game is broken out, folks. This is right down in pit lane where it started with Sam Hornish and Tony Kanaan, and now there's fists flying everywhere. Members from Team Penske, Andretti Green. Vince, are you in that mess?
Well, guys, what happened was immediately after the race, Sam Hornish jumped out of his car, went and confronted Tony Kanaan, and at that point, parties from both sides started coming to the defense of their own. And that included the father of Sam Hornish Jr., who actually pushed Tony Kanaan, and then Tony Kanaan's supporters came in, and before you knew it, Sam Hornish Jr.'s father was on the ground scuffling with one of TK's and one of the Andretti Green's people.
All right, that's Dan Wheldon with Tony Kanaan. They are very good friends, former teammates. This is what it was a little bit earlier. This is the replay. And there is the shove by Sam Hornish Sr. And that's when everything started to break out. Michael Andretti gets involved in it. There is Marco trying to get his dad out of the way, playing peacemaker. And here's where it really erupts into an all-out shoving match. Security from the Indy Racing League steps in, and some of the Penske crew members then get involved. There's Tony Kanaan now sitting on the fence trying to catch his breath. And there, in all of it, is our race winner waiting to come out, Jack.
And Scott Dixon comes out to the applause of his crew as the man that owns Gatorade Victory Lane here at Watkins Glen. Scott, are you ever going to let somebody else get in here and enjoy this? Congratulations.
That was fantastic, man. We had a bit of a rough race there, but our luck seems to go at Watkins. I felt a few spots on the last few laps too, but the Target guys today in the pits were just rocking, man. We had no problems there, and we just had to wait for it to cycle through, but our car was bloody fast.
Let's talk about when you made that pit stop and you had to cycle through. How frustrating was it? Because, let's face it, the front runners were mired in the back.
It's so tough, you know, because you don't know how hard to pass these guys because you know it is going to cycle through, but yeah, it could have been another caution that could have helped them out as well. So it's just one of those things you got to try and wait, but not to be too cautious as well. So it worked out for us again, and that's what matters.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Fellas?
And Scott doesn't know what he's missed down in Victory Lane. The battle has been out in pit lane. Now, this was what happened very early in the race. I mean, guys have long memories in race cars.
You know, but there's got to be a lot more to this than what we saw, because in this situation here, this is where you're going there. You're going for the same piece of pavement, actually, and this is actually after the race itself. They're both going into the pit lane, and here comes Tony Kanaan chopping
off Sam Hornish. So I think that's why Sam was so mad, because the checkered flag is flown, and here comes Sam getting out of his car right now. You can tell he's in a hurry. He's just pulling off the cords and everything like that, walking over to Tony, and rightly so, saying, hey, what's that all about? The checkered flag is over. I don't understand what's going on here. And obviously Sam's dad comes in here and says, okay, let's just cool off now. And then it just continues to escalate. And this sort of reminds me of what we used to have in go-karts, Marty. It just never seems like it gets this way in big cars.
Well, it did today, as let's check in with Vince Welch.
Well, Tony Kanaan has been watching that replay, as guys, just as you are watching it. And TK, what was going on? First of all, take us back to the incident on the track when the two of you had contact. What transpired?
Well, I got to ask him. He hit me. I think when you hit somebody from behind, and I wasn't very happy, and I got out of the car to talk to him. And I think he needs his dad to defend himself all the time, and his dad bumped me, which I think is totally wrong. It's happened in the track. We need to sort it out between me and him, and if we can't sort it out, Brian Barton has to sort it out. His dad can't get in the way and bump me out of the way like that. We're not going to fight. I was not going to go punch him. We were obviously both hot, and we're talking about what happened, and I think they should let us talk about it. And his dad getting in the way and bumps me out of the way. I mean, that's why dads, they should be in the grandstands, not in the pits.
Let's go to Brianne Pedigo.
Well, Sam, it was your best road course finish ever, but unfortunately got overshadowed a bit by what just happened. Walk us through this.
I guess I'll start back to the incident on the track. Tony and I, I got to run on him going down into turn 6. And he just didn't give me room, ran me up on the curb, and basically, there was nowhere to go there, and I couldn't get out of it, and obviously we bumped a little bit. Neither one of us spun. He ended up finishing 4th, and then he runs into me coming into the pits, and starts calling me every name under the sun. But whatever. That's he wants to talk about what a great sport he is, and he is if one of his teammates wins. But if anybody else does better than he does, he's not very good. And I'm not really that worried about it from my point of view. I'm in the car, but you start running into people coming into the pit lane, you take the chance of jeopardizing all these guys' safety that are over the wall. They're not paying attention to what's going on. The race is over. They don't think there's going to be anything going on. So it's just an unfortunate deal. And, I just got to say I'm really proud of all my guys at Team Penske. We felt for a long time that we should have been getting these top 5, top 3 finishes and haven't been able to get the job done for whatever reason, getting ran into or, losing the brakes or whatever. And it was just a nice day to be able to come out here and to have a good run and to finish in the top 3.
Well, Jack Arute, it wouldn't be Watkins Glen without a little drama.
Well, you need a little passion. You need a little excitement. How excited are you? You didn't get into anything other than continue to lead in the points.
Yeah. I think we had a good race on track with a Canadian Club car. We just lost a lot of time in the pits. In laps and out laps were fast. We just were losing time either putting fuel in or getting the tires on today, and that was some of the difference. I think that allowed Sam to get ahead of us. Dixon really drove a hell of a race, though. So congratulations to him and his whole crew, because they did another textbook race here, and I was giving it everything. But I think we lost out in the pits today.
Let's see if we can get a quick word from your car owner, Michael Andretti, as well. Kind of mixed feelings for you, Michael, because you got the points lead. I watched as you kind of talked your son through this race, getting the monkey off of his back, and then all of a sudden, sheer bedlam after the race. You don't look any the worse for wear, though.
No, I mean, hey, it's emotions. A lot going on here, a lot at stake, and it's no big deal. 3rd, 4th, and 5th, not too bad, and can you say, unfortunately Dario's pit stops weren't quite what we should have had, because that was the difference. But
so what do you do there? Because I know that you've kind of gone through and different folks working on on the rear tires. What's the next step?
Just keep working on it. Keep practicing the guys and stuff, and we'll be all right. I think Dario did exactly what he needed to do today. Kept Dixon in sight, so that's all he's got to do the rest of the year, and he'll be okay.
I noticed that when the fracas broke out, it was your son that came and got you. What did he say to you?
He just said, you're better than that, just get away. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm just, protecting my driver too, so, Tony, so I do that.
All right, fellas. Let's take a look at the points, all right?
Yeah, let's take a look at the points, because the gap has narrowed a bit with the win now for Scott Dixon, his 3rd in a row here at the Glen, and his first in almost a year. It was back at Nashville a year ago. He's cut it from 65 down to 47, with Tony Kanaan now a solid 3rd at 75 markers back. Dan Wheldon is 81 points. He was tied with Kanaan coming in to the race. There's the celebration still going on. Scott still probably hasn't seen all this. We'll be back after this from our ABC stations. The Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix, brought to you by Camping World, America's outdoor store. XM Radio with Indy Racing, exclusive coverage from the Wheels Up. And the Home Depot, you can do it. And there is the celebration continuing in Victory Lane. Scott Dixon ought to just rename that place, Scott Dixon Way. While we've got a chance, let's talk about Sunday night favorites on ABC tonight. 7 o'clock, 6 Central. It's start an hour of America's Funniest Home Videos, followed by Extreme Makeover Home Edition. Then at 9, 8 Central, it's a hot night on Wisteria Lane for the Desperate Housewives, right before Brothers and Sisters. Stay with ABC all night tonight. And speaking of prime time, we had a prime time fight at the end of this race. And the older gentleman with the baseball cap is Sam Hornish Sr. There's a push, a little slap from Tony, but those guys have got helmets on. Marco's getting his father out of the way. You already heard their comments if you were with us a little earlier. And then all of a sudden, this is when everybody starts hitting the deck.
We shouldn't be laughing at this, but this is a situation where the emotions are there, and it looks like Danica Patrick's father gets in there, and he's got no dog in the fight. If that is actually him coming in there in that situation, he needs to be somewhere else. And obviously, here's Sam, and I don't know if that's egging on Tony or what have you, but that shouldn't have happened right there. I mean, Sam Sr. needs not to get in the middle of that, and obviously that turns around and escalates everything. That little push from Tony towards Sam takes it to the next step, and then here we go.
Jack, bring us some more perspective on this.
Well, let's get a perspective from someone that's been involved in more than his share of fracases. AJ Foyt, you just watched what unfolded. What did you think?
None of them took their helmets off. They wasn't going to get hurt.
They were smart, right?
I don't know, a stupid one.
Let's talk to your driver, Darren Manning. Outstanding drive. This ABC supply team is starting to find its own on road courses. How was the drive today?
Well, it was a good 7/8 of a race, but then at the end there, I lost all kind of power in my arms. I need to get down the gym a little bit more and end up a bit like AJ with some strong arms. I just couldn't turn the steering wheel and drop back behind Kosuke and Dan. So it was a good race. It was nice overtaking a few people and fighting in there with Sam a little bit. It didn't get as close as it did with Tony, but I had a bird's eye view of it all. It was just racing.
Hey, fellas, one of the things AJ just told his driver, he's going to ship him off to Salem to build up these arms. Could be a little scary.
Well, we talked about the physicality of this racetrack. There's a perfect example. Now, you mentioned AJ. Of course, he may have a smile on his face on this, but we've seen his moments. 1997, this was when Ari Luyendyk went into Victory Lane when AJ's driver, Billy Boat, had been declared the winner, and AJ promptly decked Ari. And, of course, now we have two parents, T.J. Patrick, Danica's father, getting into it with Sam Hornish's dad, Sam Hornish Sr., and we'll talk more about that. We'll also talk to the racers because that's what it's all about. It's their race, after all. That's Buddy Rice. Stay with us here at the Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix. Celebration continues at Watkins Glen. Let's talk about the most prestigious golf championship in the world. It returns to ABC Saturday, July 21st. The British Open, 9 a.m. Eastern on Saturday, then Sunday, July 22nd, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, let's go to Marco's onboard. This is the view from this fisticuffs that initially started out, and we've got an update on some of this, and you can see there is Sam coming on over. Marco's climbing out because he understands things are starting to unfold. And we have been able to confirm it was not T.J. Patrick that was involved. The guy looks an awful lot like him, but we know for sure that T.J. was not involved in that. We wanted to clarify that right away. In fact, Vince has caught up with T.J.
He may have been in a scuffle or two at some point during his life, but it wasn't today. He's looking at the replay here, equally as interested as the fans are, for sure, as well. But TJ just wanted to clarify. He said, hey, wait a minute, I'm back at the bus, and I hear people are saying I was involved. You weren't involved in this at all. Can we clear that up?
Yeah, clear it up. I'm back here, and people are coming up and saying, were you in that? And I'm going, in what? I don't even know what went on. So I'm just watching it the first time right now.
We talked to Ron Dixon, Scott's dad, after the win about the joy of seeing his son win. And then today you watched Danica. She finished 11th, had some trouble getting through traffic. Kind of frustrating from that perspective as a parent as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it was frustrating. I mean, we got held up by one car for about 5-6 laps, so we were clearly 2-3 seconds faster then, and it just happens.
Yeah, the parents experiencing all the emotions here today at Watkins.
I didn't do anything. I got a blue shirt on.
Yeah, it was a white shirt. Let's go to Brienne.
Well, it was another solid finish for Buddy Rice. He's had 2 top 5s in the last 2 races and finished 6th here today. Buddy, knowing now that we've got 3 road courses left in the season, how does that feel, knowing that you had such a good finish here?
It makes us feel good because I think we have some other strong runs to be able to move up in the points. I mean, our first stint today flat sucked. I don't know what really happened, but we'll make the proper adjustments. I mean, we had something to run with those guys in the next 2 stints. We saw that when we were running with Marco. At the end of the day, we need to conserve some fuel. We made some early pit stops and some risky calls on that, but it seemed to pay off. We got a 6th place finish. We got some more good points, and we'll carry on and we'll see what happens at the next round, the UFC bout.
Well, you love road courses. Tell me why.
I mean, I grew up running road racing. I came back here in '97 for my first time at Watkins Glen. I really enjoy the road racing and some of the smaller formulas that I ran. So it's just great to come and run more road races.
Guys?
All right, thanks, Brienne. And another, as you said, a good run by Buddy Rice. And, we've had a lot of pushing and shoving going on in the IndyCar Series this year. Emotions have been running high. Remember this from a little bit earlier this year?
Whenever you get out of the cockpit, that's when you're more emotional than any time, especially if things don't go right. We see this here situation today, the situation that we had before, always hard for drivers to get out and be calm.
Well, at least Danica and Dan had their helmets off. Those two still had them on, and they didn't even get up into the fight. It was somebody else that ended up going on the deck. So we're going to step aside, take a commercial break. We'll close things out here from Victory Lane. That's right, he's number 1 again. Back here at Watkins Glen, where the celebration still continues. I think Scott Dixon's getting a phone call from somebody, and he's taking it right down there while everybody else is waiting to take some more photos. And there's the running order with the final results right across the top of the screen. Sort of been overshadowed a little bit by the action that happened after the race. And I will agree with Tony Kanaan on one thing. Parents and anybody who's not involved as far as a race crew member, they have no business being in this deal.
I would agree with you because parents are going to be probably more emotional, maybe not know the full story of everything that had gone on track.
And I guarantee you Brian Barnhart, president of the Indy Racing League, will be taking a close look at all this, and he has the power to ban people from pit lane.
Well, there'll probably be some of that going on. Also, a lot of fines, I'm sure, will be levied here, and some of the prize money that people are collecting here this weekend are probably going to go back into the points fund.
And this is another view of it one more time. You'll probably get a chance, if you missed all the details, you'll probably get a chance to see it on SportsCenter, as obviously anytime something like this breaks out, it seems to get a lot of attention. Meanwhile, poor Scott Dixon, he doesn't know any of this has been going on because he's been celebrating over in Victory Lane his 3rd straight win here at Watkins Glen. Only the 2nd IndyCar Series driver to win 3 in a row at the same track. It was Miami Homestead for Dan Weldon the last 3 years. Tune in Saturday night for the Firestone IndyCar 200 at Nashville on ESPN. We'll see you at 7:30 Eastern Time. Coming up next, ABC's World News, your local news, except on the West Coast. And we'll congratulate Scott Dixon one more time, winner of the Camping World IndyCar Grand Prix. For Scott Goodyear, Jack Arute, Brienne Pedigo, Vince Welch, and our tire, ESPN on ABC Crew, I'm Marty Reed. Till we meet again next Saturday night in Nashville. Keep your fists up, everybody.